Okay, so I didn't quite get the pattern reading in the last tutorial, so we're going to go over pattern reading here. These kind of little booklets you can pick up pretty much anywhere in a craft store. I don't know if they have them at Target. I know they have them at Walmart. They used to have them, oh my gosh, I'm thinking way back in the day, like Rite Aid, but I don't think they have that anymore. Anyway, normally where there's yarn, you can find some kind of pattern book. And if you find something you like, hey, it's good to know some basics here. Actually, this is like a little booklet. You can get these really huge, thick books, all sorts of information, good stuff. But normally, like for these little pattern books, they'll give you their general instructions. Like the abbreviations are not always the same, so you do need to be checking these. Not only abbreviations, but what little, like an asterisk means in this particular book. And parentheses, I have found out, are very important to know what they mean. And they'll tell you about the gauge, which is essential for proper sizing. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And they'll tell you how to do a whip stitch, which is if you have two separate pieces of any kind of crochet, that's generally how you're going to put it together, is the whip stitch. I actually used a pattern here. Yeah, here. Now the specific pattern, it'll tell you the finished size, the materials needed. This was super easy because all it called for was some yarn and a hook. That is really, really nice and simple there. The pattern itself wasn't simple, but that at least was. And here we are back to gauge, which this is why I'm saying it's important to have your tension right or know how to control your tension, because whenever you're making something that needs to fit over something, like maybe you're making an article of clothing or, I don't know, a tea cozy, something like that, you're going to need to follow a specific gauge, because if it's too tight, it's not going to fit because your tension's too tight. Or if your tension's too loose, it won't look good either. So you need to check. For this, the 12 double crochet and 7 rows is 4 inches. They even have you go through a swatch, which is a little unusual, but they'll tell you to chain 14 loosely and do the whole little gauge swatch to make sure you have the correct tension. It's that important. If you find that you're too loose or it's bigger than you need to be, then use a smaller hook. If it's tighter or smaller than it needs to be, use a larger hook. Whatever it needs to do to get that particular gauge. Now, having said all of that, sometimes it's just not that important. Like a blanket, if you're half an inch off, I wouldn't sweat it. It's just going to be a little larger. Only if it runs smaller, then I would worry about it. But normally, it is really just a good practice to get into, is checking your gauge. And then also, they talk about stitch guide. This is, again, just one pattern put out by Leisure Arts. Gosh, and this is old, too, I can tell you that. And each pattern, I'm just going to show you another one, how they can just look different. They are very, very helpful in that everything you need to know is right up front. It's highlighted. And always, unless it's just straight out single crochet or straight out double crochet with no, I don't know, doodads or doohickeys, really special patterns, they're going to tell you, okay, a treble crochet. Now we'll get into that later on. How to do a double crochet, what they consider a treble crochet, what they consider a double treble crochet, and how to make a cluster. They'll tell you these things. Now I just want to show you also, actually I'm going to show you what I made. I'm going to show off a little bit. That was what I ended up making. I made it a little bit longer because I didn't like the dimensions. I know it's a lat blanket. I'm going to give it to my mom whenever I get down there someday. Here's that pineapple motif that I just discussed in an earlier tutorial. Love it. And we're almost out of time here. Yeah, now here's another example of, okay, ooh. It's not that easy. This is like a magazine, so it's not as easy to follow, as you can see. It's going to tell you dimensions, your materials, and then off you go. And they, I think, have all their information in the back. Yeah, they even tell you how to crochet. This is really old. This is really old.